Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Fix My Fees podcast, where merchant services is so boring. I bring on interesting people and pick their brain in order to give you guys guidance and understanding. I am your host, Tavius Washington. And if you've been following along with me, or even if this is your first time, something that I've been transitioning to is feeling of having conversations with people I feel like can impact more people in more ways than just traditional return on investment, right? And someone as myself has been trying to grow in leadership. I thought I'd bring on someone who is an expert at that. This is somebody who has 30 plus years in corporate executive turned into a leadership innovator, right? Former COO and president and helped scale things like Fleetcor to tripling its revenue over 4 years. So to being able to build up his own business, and even dying to dive into that I just found out about. And so I'm going to be asking them questions around that. So here's somebody that not only can help you elevate yourself and your personality and who you are as a leader, but that in turn will help your business. So please help me welcome Matt Krall. How you doing, Matt?
Thanks for having me, Tavius.
So Matt, it was cool chatting with you from the beginning, just seeing how, the things you've done with working with athletes and being an athlete yourself and coming into now, but going from, what you've done in the corporate world till now, how did that even happen? I kind of want to know the journey and what do you do daily on a, like an everyday basis so people can set the stage.
Oh, certainly. So, taking it back, as you mentioned, I grew up playing sports. Grew up in Texas. Football is king in Texas.
Oh, man, heck yeah.
Battled my way through, battled my way through it. And it was at kind of a peak time of when communities rallied around it. I say that because our stadium had capacity for about 15,000 people. Our first game, we had 40,000 people. And so the district actually rented out Cowboys Stadium where we had the rest of our home games. So, averaging 30 to 40,000 people in high school is something a little bit different. But I had the opportunity to go to college, play sports at University of Notre Dame. Played football and baseball there, and then had an opportunity to go on and play minor league baseball for a few years. And, that taught you a lot about leadership in a variety of different ways, right? The thing I love about sports is the feedback loop is really, really quick, right? Different than what I learned in business where it's 6 months or companies do reviews once a year. And I'm like, okay, but imagine playing a game and then waiting 12 months to review the game film.
Right.
And so it was always an odd concept, but I had opportunity to get into business. I got into consumer finance, early stages with Capital One. I was actually the 180th employee. And we grew from 180 to 18,000 in 6 years, from 1.2 million accounts to 54 million accounts. And then kind of just went off on my own, went to GE for a while, went to Fleetcor, Credit One Bank. And then lastly, I took a role as president of Premier Bankcard, which is in the subprime lending space. It was a top 20 issuer. Through the 3 years of COVID, we went from the 19th largest issuer to the 10th largest issuer, and actually really accelerated growth through that. So I've always been a lifelong learner of trying to figure out what makes teams click.
Right.
Because that's the one thing I missed playing sports, right? You get into business and early in my career, it didn't feel very cohesive from a team perspective, right? And in some companies, frankly, because the culture was bad, it was competition to the point of negativity, right? People were trying to beat each other out. They weren't helping each other out. And, it just felt awkward in that. And all of it erodes business performance at the end of the day, right? When teams aren't clicking. So I've spent my life kind of studying different mechanisms, different philosophies. And it wasn't until later in my career did I begin to recognize that businesses didn't set up systems to allow for successful human behavior. Because I think I shared with you before, I actually believe people are drowning in content in today's world, right? To say you don't know something is completely unrealistic in this age of AI now, right? Because you can go on AI and basically that's a repository of everything that's ever been created in human history and you can learn it. Now that said, you go on AI and do that. Most of the time, generically what you were trying to search to begin with, right? And so the question for me became, well, if people know, yet in times of typically it's under pressure, people can't do. What causes that gap, right? And I refer to that as internal capacity. People either have thoughts, beliefs, fears, anxiety, things that are more psychological that aren't allowing them to perform, right? Right. And it's no different than sports, right? In sports, we use sports psychologists. And I follow the PGA Tour largely because I'm just fascinated how consistently good everyone on the tour is, right? You look at any stat and the standard deviation is like 1 or 2 points. And you're like, wait a second. You have 150, 160 people that perform within a standard deviation that is super, super tight. So, what happens in time of stress? Yesterday when Fox was, I think he was tied going into 18. 18's the toughest hole, played just horribly tough all week. He ropes a drive and then hits an iron to within like 8 feet. And I think recorded only the 4th birdie on that hole all day, right? With all this pressure to win. And so, clearly he practiced something, right? To make that feel a little bit more automatic, to release some of that tension that inherently comes in times of pressure. Yeah. So that's what I'm about. So I, like I said, I was president for a while. We grew that business. The owner didn't think we'd grow it. He thought it would take 15 years. It took 3. And so we kind of parted ways. And in business, I never really felt fully fulfilled. I get fulfilled in helping people grow to their fullest potential. And so I decided to get into executive coaching, still do that. And while that's fun, you're only able to impact me due to time capacity, about 8 people a year at a time. That, and companies spend a lot of money in deeper work on very, very senior people. And we got to figure out a way in this universe of ours and on this planet to provide everyone with that level of coaching and performance work, because ultimately that's what's going to accelerate business results to where most businesses want to achieve.
Right. And I had seen that like a part of what you're doing at Elevate You is, and I like the way it's framed, is that you're helping people work on their human operating system, right? Mm-hmm. What do you mean? But I know think of it in terms of like iOS with our iPhones and things like and we always think of it as like software and hardware and downloads and uploads. But when you think of it in that capacity as a human operating system, what do you mean?
So I think there's 2 components to it. It's a great question. The first component is recognize that it's psychology, right? Businesses kind of work on 2 different components at a time. I would say work might be a loose term. We'll get into that. Right. There's the mechanics of business, right? It's the strategy. It's the communication. It's how to manage vendors, how to actually tactically go to market and other aspects, right? It's all the stuff we learn in business school. And the way I frame it is view an iceberg, right? I view the mechanical pieces are the tip of the iceberg. It's the 10 or 20% of what drives a business. I actually believe 80% of what drives a business is psychological, right? It's people that have limiting beliefs, fears, all the things that churn up inside people that stop them from making decisions, from moving forward, from being present in moments and listening and truly being curious to find solutions. And we live in a world that is fueled on just reaction, right? All day, every day, there is a $1 trillion industry that is solely designed to steal your attention and get you focused on some quick hit win. Quick dopamine hit. And so I think over time that trains you to do that. And so you get into the operating system. And the way I would say it is you never learned any capability in your entire life without practicing it and continuing to practice until it became somewhat automatic, right? Yes. Whether that's driving a car, tying your shoes, sports related golf, whatever it is. When you think in business, how often do you practice?
Not often. It's funny because you're right when you think of it like that. Because like over this weekend, I realized how much time gets wasted in my week on minuscule times. And I didn't realize until I deleted the Facebook app off my phone and said, if I ever want to go on Facebook, I have to grab my big iPad. And then every time I pick up my phone, my thumb instinctively hits this button where it usually is. And I'm like, why do I keep doing that? And it didn't really click until about like the 50th time. I'm like, that's where the Facebook button used to be. And it was just so automatic that my finger still goes there, even though it's not there anymore. Right. So
they effectively trained you in a behavior, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Without you knowing it, which is brainwashing.
Sad, you think about it, but they do spend billions just learning how dopamine works. That's the only reason why we know how it works to this level, so that they can keep it to you.
They fuel the cheap dopamine hits. I mean, just think of how many, I'm older, seasoned, whatever you want to call it. Right. And there's been, a ton of different technological evolutions, right? And, I mentioned this because there were some more seasoned people in the event we did of, hey, who had pagers back in the day and thought that was the rage, right? And then you moved to Blackberries, and literally there was fights over who gets Blackberries. And so it's kind of just evolved through that. But when you think about how many alerts, pings, different things that hit you over the course of the day today than just 10, 15 years ago, right? All of that steals your attention. And there has been studies that show that when you lose focus on something, it takes close to 20 minutes for you to regain the same level of focus you started with before the interruption.
Yes. I want.
And so you go through the day now, and there's hundreds of these things, hundreds.
Yes.
Right. So how do we, you have to put in systems in place, like you talked about, shut things off, do quiet periods. I do electronic blackout periods where, me and the family will go for 3 days without using an iPad. And the first day there are withdrawals, right? You're like, hey. And then finally your nervous system calms down. You realize, oh my God, I'm not really missing anything. Right?
Yes. Yeah. I'm learning that more. I'm like, oh, I don't argue with people as much. It's so much better when I'm not on Facebook. But with you were saying that because I can see how that can trickle down, and not necessarily trickle down. That could be a thing within the employees that the leadership doesn't even know that is happening. And like you're saying, there are these constant distractions throughout the entire thing on top of the competitiveness. Like you said, I've been in sales for a decade. I know what it's like to be in a competitive nature where you can have someone take your lead that you've been working on for 3 months and they get paid the commission. And now y'all are bapping back and forth because he was the one that took the card. And it's like, how do you start to even begin to know where to start when it comes to an organization and how to even fix that or get things more focused in a human operating system that is focused inside of a business, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So let me clear up one perception that I disagree with, right? That, people could keep work at work and home at home. And there's this weird kind of balance. The net effect is we spend 70% of our waking hours at work. If there are things at work that set you off center and you go home, you are bringing that home with you, right? Conversely, if there are things at home that set you off center, they're sending you into work in the morning off center and not in a productive state. So,
Sure. Right.
The net effect is I believe as a business owner, you need to care for people in your stead so that you are sending them home in a positive state. They can create that positive state at home so that the next morning they can send them back in a positive state. So what that leads to is it has to start with the individual first. You have to start training individuals to better self-regulate is the first step. And then actually spend some time thinking about, and what I call chasing it to the end, chase what's causing some of these emotions, what thoughts are there, what beliefs are there to the end so that you truly can understand it so that you can better move through it. So our process is we take organizations, we start with the individual. We do start layering in common language and other aspects, right? So think about any team you've ever been part of. You had your own kind of language, right?
Yeah.
You made up stuff, right? You intercept a football and you'd yell Oski. I'm like, well, I don't even know what the hell that means, but in my mind, it's an interception and everyone needs to galvanize and kind of lead the way. So we do that in the first layer. Then we move to teams. And in teams, once you have common language and everyone is intentional in their actions, which is some of the practices that we start in the individual side, what we see happening is the teams themselves start raising and forming their own standards. Now, most leaders go, oh my God, I can't do that. In every single case, those standards are higher than what their leaders would have said they could implement themselves.
Why do you think, hold on, why do you think that is? So you're saying that and I just want to make sure I'm hearing this right before I answer. We're saying that if you can instill it in them to push their own standards higher, that it's higher than if the leader or CEO sets that standard for them in each, department that they're working. How does that
think about it, right? So if it's a top-down thing, most of the time, at most, you can get compliance.
True.
Right? You never get full commitment. And when the team owns it, and let's be honest, the team owns culture. I don't care what the CEO has, I don't care what's on the wall, because culture is a sum of the behaviors of the environment you're in each and every day.
Yeah.
Right? Then I ask the people on the team, well, who owns those behaviors? Well, I do. Okay. So then who owns culture? Well, we do. Right? Because when you leave at night and the lights go off, is there a culture in that building? No, you're not there.
Right. Nothing's there.
The culture comes when you come in.
Right.
So you could do this top down thing and then assume that things are all right, or it needs to be a bottom up and a shared thing at the end of the day. And so when a team starts sharing what their standards are, it automatically moves the needle north.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. And it also goes into what you were saying before about like people who pretend that they could separate. It doesn't, because like you said, the culture leaving comes with you, and how you're feeling coming into work. If you're like, oh, here we go another day versus being excited, can all make a difference. And when you leave,
have a positive attitude, right?
Right. So is that some of the things, like I know you talked about your event. Is that some of the things you go over in an event? How did that work over the weekend when you were doing your event?
Certainly. So we do two different things. We do deeper dives where we do individual retreats where we go deep, right? And we surface a lot of kind of emotion. We've created that largely for more senior executives. And I say that because you might say that, oh, senior executives got this in their pocket. They don't get bothered by this stuff, so on and so forth. And I would defend that they've learned how to perform really, really well, right? They know how to perform emotional regulation really, really well.
You use the word perform on purpose, it's seeming like.
Well, you perform, you're faking it.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So let's be honest, people pick up on that, right?
Yeah, they do.
You have probably had leaders before in the past and standing from afar, if you videotaped them, like, this is spot on. This is exactly what great leaders do. But then you ask, were they genuine about it? Some are, some aren't.
Right.
Right. And most of the ones that aren't, that's just a performance, right? They're up there acting as they think they should act, and they have some challenges and stuff that they need to work through. And the further up you go, the more you're combating your own story in your head that's saying, hey, I got to show that I'm not vulnerable, that I got everything together, so on and so forth. And all that does is reinforce the performance. Right? I got to perform better. Well, right. Okay. So we do deep dive retreats. That's just a little bit on that where we spend 3 days and people go deep on trying to figure out their why. Actually chasing it all the way upstream to beliefs, and we can get into that if we have time. And there's crying, there's a lot of emotional stuff that kind of comes out of people. Then we do kind of group, what I call experiences. So we bring in a group of leaders, like we did last week, 2 different events. And we walk them through kind of the very surface level of our process and our coaching mechanism. Right. And when we go through anything, we have 3 different phases in each of these. First, you have to learn form, right? If you're going to start lifting weights, I'm not going to put you on a 700-pound deck without you understanding, hey, this is kind of where you need your body to be, so on and so forth. So we do form, then we do load, right? So once you have the form, great, let's start stacking some weights on there and doing the reps. And then the third thing is flow. So how do you actually start transitioning this from it feels really, really heavy and hard, and it takes a lot of motivation and drive to even do a rep, to, hey, this is who I am, right? And I can kind of crank through this. And that's a natural neurological process, right? And, you heard sometimes it takes 300 swings, it takes 66 days, whatever it be. It takes however long it takes. Funny story. Well, it's like, if people go to CrossFit, this is the example, and they go for a month, will they have made some progress?
A little bit,
I would say more than most, because I don't think you can fake CrossFit.
Right. You can't.
Right. So, it comes down to, you have to do the reps at the end of the day. But the part we get into in form is just getting people to understand where they're stuck, right? Because we ask people, hey, how many of you set goals that 2 to 3 weeks later you drop the goal? And most of the time, it's because they're not following the right neurological sequence. So if I were to ask you, Tavius, last time you set a goal, what did you do? What was your process in the goal setting process?
Oh man, it was just what we were talking about. My goal was to reduce the amount of time I'm spent aimlessly on social media and try to put that hours, because it's hours a day. Not going to lie to you on this podcast right now, that I can put into more meaningful things, even if it's just micro learning. So that was the goal, is to reduce social media intake to learn more in that time instead of doom scrolling. So that was the goal.
So what I would say is the natural process of which we were taught and trained in our society is you move directly to action, right?
Yeah.
You then have to kind of willpower your way to an end state closer to that action. And most of the time it ends up in regression, right? You start resenting what you're doing, so on and so forth, or just get tired. And then it ends in burnout and you stop with the goal. So we take a different process in the fact that we believe you have to start with awareness. So why is this really, really important? What's getting in the way? What's the cost of this? If I were to continue doing what you're doing on social media for the next 10 years, what is that going to cost you? What is that going to cost your relationships? And what is that going to cost the future you that you're trying to become? And once you put that down, it kind of hits home emotionally of, whoa. That's a little bit more important than, hey, I just need to, or I want to, or I should. And then the second phase, that's what we call awareness. The second phase is alignment. So this is getting true to who you are, what you're good at, and what you want to become, and getting real with it and understanding that at your core. Because if you do those first 2 steps before you start laying out action, it becomes part of your identity if you don't do it, right? My identity is X. Now I'm telling myself, if I do this, that's against X.
Right.
That provides you the self-motivation, and that also registers in your brain a little bit differently. So I believe that before anyone moves to action, you have to go through awareness and alignment in order for it to become more successful from an execution perspective.
Man, that's powerful. Because immediately when you said that awareness, you started to go through it. It was like, what is the cost 10 years from now? My mind immediately went to, well, from an aggregated perspective, it is different with weekends and weekdays. But from an aggregated weekly, it's about 3 hours a day. And I'm like, 3 hours a day, 365 days a year, 10 years. That is tens of thousands of hours gone into the ether. That's just like literally doesn't give me any positivity. It's majority negative. And even if it is positive, it's usually, just scrolling and a couple of funny people doing some funny things. But I didn't think of it until you said that. And I was like, God, tens of thousands of hours on social media for what? So, and that's just off the, the very first instinct. I haven't even had time to sit down and think
Absolutely.
about it.
Right. And, there's a bunch of different ways to do it, but spend some time doing it because it's really important, right? The one that usually hits home with people is, you have children, and how much would you pay for being able to have the 10-year-old child back and you spending an extra hour a day with them? Most people say it's priceless.
Priceless. Yeah.
Right. Oh, okay. How much, then what is that costing you? We actually get them to tie a number and then do that over 10 years. Right. And, I think again, because we're in such a rush and trained now through these tools to accept instant gratification, I call that a cheap dopamine hit, right? It doesn't last. I feel good, right? You laugh at the person's post. Oh, okay. And then it passes. Well, we have to recognize as human beings from a biological perspective, you wake up every morning and overnight your body replenishes your dopamine in your system.
Right.
When it goes, and it takes hours to get it back.
Right.
there's some science that shows that first thing in the morning, the people who reach to their phone and start doing the phone stuff right when they wake up, on average, they deplete close to 50% of their dopamine hit in the first 30 minutes of the day.
Whew.
And you have to ask yourself, okay, what did you gain out of that?
Yeah.
Most of it, to your point, is not a good feeling. Stepping into the world you're going to step into the rest of the day, right?
Yeah. It's just like you said, it's that instant stimulation. But then, like, if you really sit back, and even this doesn't need, it could be so many other things. It could be drugs, alcohol. It could be, porn, other things that give you that thing. But then when you look back and go, well, okay, cool. Tell me a time that tell me 3 times where that has meaningfully impacted your life in a positive way. You know what I mean? It's like, I may have learned something that I could have found on the news, but it's not usually the good side of it. So how do things like that, especially like when it comes to goal setting, because like even that, I learned something new. How does that impact how leaders help others with their own goal setting and things like that?
Perfect. So at the core, if you were leading a team, have you led people before?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I've led sales teams before.
Okay. So what if you truly understood at the person's core what drove them, right? On your team.
I think if I truly understood what drives them at the core, I would be able to use that to further help them in their own part in the business do more.
Well, it's that, and then you could tie it to the business itself.
Right.
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 And in a way that's meaningful, that shows them, hey, look, I could do this. Right. And I'm in connection now with the business. It's not a causality that I'm here to earn money to do my own thing. Right. And you give me money. Now we're working together towards a goal, because I believe teams need 2 things to be successful: trust and respect. Now I define trust, because if I were to ask 50 people in a room what trust means, I'd come up with 50.
That's what I was going to ask you.
So I think with any of these values, you need to tie it into behaviors. And so my definition of trust is that we are working towards a shared future state together, hopefully in complete resolve. When I say complete resolve, that means we are at peace with where we're going. Now things might change and we might have to course correct, but we are going to work together towards that future goal. Right. And then the other is respect. Respect for me is having diversity of skills on a team so that I don't have to carry the burden entirely myself. Right. So you need an array of talent on the team so that we can really, really respect and use that talent for the team's behalf, again, towards moving towards that shared future objective. So if you have those 2 things, I guarantee the team's in phenomenally great shape. And I say that because the only way to achieve that trust is I have to know you at the core.
That's true. Yeah.
Right. And so one example of that, and I always laugh because you've experienced it everywhere. When you go through spikes in attrition or get into a company and it's high attrition, whatever it be, and you go ask the manager, so why did they leave? What answer always comes up?
They something. It's always on them usually.
Well, it's usually money, right? They got paid more. Okay. True. And so I started asking this question about
from why the person left. I thought you were saying like from why someone fired.
Yeah, no, why did the person leave? Oh, they got more money is usually what comes up. And so I started asking this question that completely threw people for a loop. Don't tell me about the money. Tell me what the money did for them. And if they couldn't answer that, you didn't know them.
Yeah.
And if you knew them at that level, you would have known all this coming. And I say that because at one point in time, I was leading a team and I had an individual come to me saying, hey, look, I'm really, really struggling. She was going through a divorce, going to become a single mom. Her husband was taking the car, all this stuff. And I'm like, okay. And she was kind of a medium performer. And so what do you think you're going to need to get out of this, to move forward and be healthy? Well, I'm going to have to earn some more money, so on and so forth. I might have to take a second job. And I'm like, okay, let's just pause there. We were in a collections world, so it's a little bit like sales and in inverse sales, but you did get comped and incented off of collecting more. Hey, right. Do you realize that you could actually make 40% more if you achieve this, and this? Yeah, I mean, I've been here 10 years. I've never been able to achieve that. I'm like, let's work together towards that because I think you can actually get there. And sure enough, it was about 6 months later, she comes into the office dangling keys, right? She was able to finally, own her new truck and start the path to getting back on path. So, that's what I'm saying, that there's more opportunities that are missed when people don't connect in that way. And obviously for the business here I had a 50% performer that started performing like a top 10% performer.
Right.
How often does that happen in a work environment?
Not often.
Right. It's to your point. It's the top dogs. The top dogs chewing each other's tails off to see who wins. But that pool is always that pool, right?
Well, where do you think this stems from? Because this, like the way you're talking about going about goals is a little counterintuitive, because it is majority. You do the thing and you can have all the things you want versus what is it that you want? Let me help you achieve that. Why do you feel like most leaders are more bound to go, hey, if you do your job, you can make the money to do the thing versus involving themselves?
I think it's two things. One, to be human is difficult, right? The net effect is, well, you see it now when you have vulnerable leaders and empathetic leaders, there's power in that. Yet if you were to ask most people, and let's be honest, my dad was trying to train me of keep people stuff aside, blah, 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 head down. That's their problem. And so somewhere in the world at large, that's what leadership training actually became. It became a lot on the mechanics. I say that because one of the things we do early in the events that we do is we say, okay, you're leading your company. What are the skill sets you're going to need from people 10 years from now? The most important skill sets are going to drive the business. And sure enough, most of the time, it is all people skills. Self-leadership, right? I want people who are empathetic. I want people who communicate well. I want people who are resilient, can be adaptable, so on and so forth, right? It's not, I need AI experts that can program the hell out of something. And, then we ask them kind of that iceberg question of, well, how many have been in organizations where you got any of that training?
No, not really. I learned how to communicate just communicating. Growing up, it was just what I did in the games we played that led me to be able to speak. But if I didn't have the friends that I had where we goofed off and randomly talked to people, I don't think I would have been able to even learn how to communicate it, be able to speak in this kind of podcast without it. Cause no one's ever sat with me and taught me or sent me to trainings or anything in that.
Well, and I don't think you can do it in trainings. Trainings typically are content dump.
That's
right?
true.
And as we said before, that doesn't build capability. Right. So, and this is where, part of it's a sales tactic. We do these events, right? So that people can practice just the initial surface level stuff. And then they have a breakthrough. And then it's, hey, do you want to continue this? Here's some options to continue it. The fact is you have to continue it. Right. So whether it's our system or Rob Dial, James Clear, Brene Brown, there's a bunch of really, really bright people in this space. I don't think any of them has gone to the degree we have of compiling this stuff into a process that people can use. And I say it's a process because we can't, my youngest son is great. He's into life hacks. So he tries to find those things. I can get that done in 30 seconds. And I'm like, this isn't a life hack. I can't hand you a roadmap to your process, Tavius. That's something you have to figure out. But what we can hand you is a framework to say, try this, try this, try this. And as you experiment and learn, we ask people to try it for 2 weeks, right? At the end of 2 weeks, ask yourself, is it serving me? If it is, move it, hold on to it and carry it forward. But each 2 weeks, as you start layering in the things, you have to go back to everything, because as human beings, we morph and change. And as you practice, let's say you're running and you end up running a 4-minute mile someday. Okay. Is that enough? More than likely, no, because as you're growing, what's great as you're growing is you get to a place of satisfaction within your development, and that satisfaction ends up leading to frustration, which is your mind saying you got to go further, right? You got to take that next step, try something new. So, what I would say is, everyone should be continually working on stuff. Now, what that stuff is, I believe it all starts with the following framework if you have a little bit of time.
Yeah. You got time.
So if you write down these words in this order: belief, arrow out to the right; thoughts, out to the right; emotions, out to the right; actions, and then the actions end up in results. I think when most of us get into a situation where you did something that you really didn't mean to do, right? Kind of that gap of I knew what to do, I didn't execute upon what to do for whatever reason. We go back one layer to emotions, right? To say, well, did I go into that? Well, I was kind of pissed off going into it. So that probably impacted the actions and ultimately impacted the results. And all that's positive because at least that is emotional regulation. We believe that you have to start working backwards. So what were the thoughts that drove that emotion?
True.
And that's what most of us don't take the time to do, because your thoughts drive your physical body all day, every day. And I say that because there's a technique that some people use in sports psychology where you tie a washer to a string and hold it between your thumb and forefinger. And all you have to do is think about that washer moving back and forth. And after about 30 seconds, guess what happens? The washer starts moving back and forth.
Yeah.
And then you tell them, I want you to move it forward and back. And as it's swinging back and forth, they start thinking forward and back, and it starts shifting and then starts going forward and back. And that's just proof that, and we've all experienced, if you're a golfer, right? You're on a tee box, there's water on the left. In your head, you're saying, don't hit it left, don't hit it left, don't hit it left. Don't hit it left. Yeah. And sure enough, you rip, hit it flush, dead left into the water.
Yep. I'll do that. And then I'll even shift my body, because if I shift it this way, it won't go, and it still goes.
Well, because that's what you were thinking, and your body's just following what you're thinking.
Right.
And then you go up even further is to the beliefs phase, which gets really, really deep. All of us are carrying forward other people's thoughts and beliefs.
Yeah.
Right. Because we do work with, we do work with justice impacted people. So people in the prison, we actually run some programs in the prison. Mm-hmm. And when you talk to these gentlemen and hear their history about how they grew up, it's not a surprise they're at where they're at. Right. Because they lived in those environments for 15, 20 years. And guess what's happening? They're repeating. And look, all of them would say, when I was 10, when I was 12, I told myself, I'll never, ever, ever, ever do this or be this. I'm like, the net effect is you never really were able to work yourself out of those thoughts, those beliefs, everything that you were absorbing as a kid, right? Because we're not trained to do that.
Right.
And guess what happens? You're back in it. That goes for every single person in the world. Right. So I spouted off some successes I've had, but I've always lived with the feeling that I'm not good enough. And it goes back to childhood when in 7th grade in Texas, we had just moved there. I was trying out for the football team and I was told I couldn't because I was too small. Right. And, through the next 3 years, I fought like hell to work myself into a position to play football and got a lot of that same feedback. Now, fortunately, I grew at one point in time. I grew 20 pounds a year. So I went from 140 pounds to 210 pounds. And now I'm good. Right. But as much as there's evidence in my life that tells me I'm good enough, that still enters my mind. I still remember that vividly, like it happened yesterday.
Right.
So the fact is it's there. And if it runs in the subconscious long enough, right? That comes out in actions and behaviors.
Yeah.
So we as individuals have to go a little bit deeper and do some soul searching in that regard. And if you ever want to work through that in a really, really fun and interesting way, there's a book called Cafe at the Edge of the World.
Cafe at the Edge of the World.
Yep. And I apologize, I forgot the author's name, but in a very short story, people can read it probably in 4 or 5 hours. It will walk you through how to think about your purpose for being. Because that's the ultimate question he's trying to find.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think that'll be a good read. I like that. I want you to brag for a minute and talk about, I love hearing like a story that affected you. It doesn't have to be your biggest, your best. The one that you think of that's like, man, this is why I do this, right? Whatever that case study is, that's what I want to hear. I really love to hear, because when I think about like my story, It's not even the one that had been, I helped someone make the most money. It was the one that had the biggest impact on them where, they had a wife and kids. He had a wife and no kids, and she wanted a kid and she couldn't. And then after I helped him, get in the business, make the money, end up having a kid. And that's like, and then, their middle name has a part of my name in it. Right. And it was like, that touched me more, even though it has nothing to do with return on investment. So I just want to know, is there something like that where it's like that one that touches you more, even though it may not be the necessarily biggest, or if it is the biggest, that doesn't matter. But what's one case?
Well, no. So I think you hit upon something, and I'll frame this first, right? So Maya Angelou has the famous quote: "People will forget what you did, people will forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel."
Yes.
Right. And so when you go, one exercise we do at some point is ask people to write their eulogy.
Ooh.
Right. And, it becomes very, very hard to say, I was a CEO here, I did this here, because at the end of the day, who the hell cares?
Right. They're not going to talk.
It's what you did, how you impacted people, and how you made them feel. So I say all of this because, that's something I've kind of walked and lived by. And when you do that, the challenge is, that's where we get kind of our ripple effect. So that the end piece of our chain of action is called amplification, right? So I believe that leadership is about the transference of energy, right? Mm-hmm. Now you're transferring energy, whether you want to or not, all day, every day.
All day.
Is that energy bad or is it energy good? And that's what you have to ask yourself. So I have always tried to transmit good energy. And I was working out in Seattle, and we had started up a call center out there. Phenomenal. It was during the internet phase where we thought as a credit card company, we'd start up an internet business, and we had no clue on what the hell that meant. Other than we'll book cards through the internet. But we had a storefront. It was an old Best Buy building. We kind of converted, and there were some benches out front. And every morning I would show up, and there was a gentleman sitting on the bench, and we would just sit down and talk about life, right? Not about work, so on and so forth. Seattle during the summer months, phenomenal. So great weather, and we'd chat it up. Well, it was about a year later, I had the company asked me to transfer from Seattle to lead up the site in Tampa. And I was down there for about 2 months. And one morning, pull up, and here's this gentleman waiting for me at the door. And I'm like, immediate reaction was, oh crap, what the hell did I do? He going to come at me? He chased me across the country for this? It must have been something really, really bad. And he pulled me aside and just shared that, hey, look, those conversations we had in Seattle were really, really meaningful. I was going through a divorce. I had just been diagnosed with cancer. All of this he didn't share when we were having these conversations, but he said it was really, really meaningful because you helped me be seen. Right. And I don't know if I'd be here today if you hadn't done that. So yeah, it's moments like that, no different than yours, that kind of bring the emotion out that you had a genuine connection with someone at a time of need.
Yes.
Now, if we were to propagate that more in this world, how beautiful a world it would be, right? Versus trying to find what's different about each other. How I can carve you out into some bucket or category or labels, right? So I hate labeling people, right? Because when you think about that exercise of labeling someone, it's usually off of very minimal and weak evidence, right? We all do it. Right. Because we're trained to judge, and, a label starts with a judgment. You have a judgment. And then at some point in time, you form that judgment as a label onto someone. Right. And the reason why I hate it is because once you do that mentally, right, whether you do it with yourself or you do it with someone else, your brain narrows, right? It's a portion of your brain called the reticular activating system, and it narrows to only find evidence to prove that point. It will completely ignore all other evidence. And so you're putting someone in a hole that they can't get out of, which is completely unfair based on a behavior. Right. So one term I love using is, and when I'm coaching and when I was leading people, love the person, address the behavior. The behavior itself isn't the person.
Right. Right.
So if you're able to separate that, you can have a grounded conversation and maybe even a difficult conversation, right? Because having conversations in this space is never comfortable.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of my definition, or the definition between nice and kind.
Right.
Right. Kind is protecting you and your emotions and your comfort. Kind is serving others. So are you really serving others without telling them what that opportunity is? Now, in the moment, they will not feel good. They might even have some resentment. But in my experience, every single time post, it's built trust and built respect.
I like that, man. In such a short time, we've talked about so much. You got my mind thinking about so many things. Like I even want to, I've made little marks for this podcast. Like, man, I need to go back myself and revisit the goals section and how I'm doing that. And then like, what you're talking about and how you're breeding the culture and how making sure you're getting involved and knowing what drives them. I think a lot of those are important. And so I really want people to know who do you work with and how can they get in touch with you to be able to dive into this more for their own personal journey or their own personal business? Tell people how they can reach out to you.
Yeah. So there's two paths. One on my personal website, it's mattkrall.com. And I offer a free service called a clarity conversation where I'll send you, you have to give me something. It's a give to get. You give me your name, address, so on and so forth. And I get you a 6-question worksheet that will force you to go a little bit deep. And then I schedule a 20-minute call with you, and then we can go to that next level deeper, right? So what most people do, like I said earlier, is get to the emotion phase. I start pushing into the thoughts and beliefs phase, and we start uncovering different stuff, kind of at the core. So that's more on the personal side and individual coaching. And then we have goelevateyou.com, which is more of our organizational focus. There we work with companies. It's a 48-week program that we walk people through. What we found is no different than you. There are some people that are skeptical to start, right? This feels too woo-woo and soft in other aspects. And I would tell you that we're seeing data that it is far from woo-woo. We have 2 companies now that have gained over 15% productivity improvements.
Nice.
As a result of doing this work. And the engagement scores have gone up pretty considerably as a result as well. So that I just say is there's math behind it. I'm a business person. At the end of the day, I don't do woo woo. We partner with people to actually get the performance results that they want. If they're still in doubt, we'll pay to play, which means we'll be fully paid off of performance if you don't believe that. So the other thing we offer there is a 6-week pilot. Give us one cohort, one team. Let us put together these practices and get them moving along. And in every single one of those cases, it's been amazing just to show how people's mindsets start to shift over a 6-week time period, right? They shift into, hey, this is the standard I'm holding, right? Because we ask them to do identity or intention statements at the beginning of the day. And the great thing about this is it's 10 minutes a day. Right. These are simple practices, no different than when we played sports, of whether it's the huddle up, the hype up, just little things that start the attention focused in the right way, aligned with each other because people share theirs. And then at the end of the day, no different than what you were mentioning, you're going to go back in this video and I'd say go back in this video and just continue exploring, because what you're indicating is there's so much noise going on in your life that you never take the time to pause and think about some of this stuff, right? So we have to do that. So the last thing we ask people to do is a 5-minute reflection at the end of the day, right? And that is your game film of, hey, I started the day with this intention. I wanted to be a leader who cared for others in a way that was responsible, yada, yada, yada. At the end of the day, time to fess up, right? Game film time, right? And you're hoping that the coach gives you an A when you know full and well it's probably a B minus C because you knew some plays that you could have done better on. You can't hide from it. And so just be honest with yourself and say, hey, but at the end of the day, we always share, grant yourself and grant each other imperfect practice. If you are perfect, you wouldn't need to practice. Yep. And if you were perfect, you wouldn't be listening to things like this.
Right. Love that, man. Thank you so much. As we start to tune out, because it's been so much fun. And you know me, I can ask way more questions. But one thing we talked about earlier, and I do like for people to, kind of dive into the guest lives a little bit. And so you talked about how your work and your life goes together outside of helping people have these transformations and diving into the neuroscience and really getting people to think. What are some of the things you like to do? I did hear you mention kids and sports and things. So what do you like to do outside of work to,
Yeah. So I have an amazing family, and it goes back to that book I told you to read. There's a concept in that book that says three things. One, we work to consume, only to delay fulfillment. And so what I would say is I recognize that I get to wake up every single day, have breakfast with my kids, talk about whatever they need to talk about. I'm much more available to my family than I ever have been, working in corporate environments. And frankly, it was a mistake I made through my career that I should have done more of. So for me, I like just engaging with people, whether it's mentoring, whether it's going to talk to people. We have a center downtown that is for upstart entrepreneurs called Startup Sioux Falls, and going down there, and I'll office down there and end up getting absolutely nothing done that I want to work on. But you end up having conversations with a lot of really young, bright kids who are stuck because they have this weird perception that I need angel investors and all this other kind of stuff to start businesses. And it's so far from the truth nowadays.
Yeah.
Right. Because AI is a powerful tool. And then some of these one-off tools like Riverside and some of the other ones you're using make it really, really easy to get a lot of this stuff done at what I would call is ridiculously cheap prices, right? In the grand scheme of things. Back in the day when you had to hire someone who was an expert, you'd be paying them $40,000, $50,000. Now you're getting it for, $200 or $10 or $15 a month. So just figure out what tools you need and just start going. And so I spend a lot of time in throughout the community. I do play golf and that kind of stuff. And then I network with a bunch of guys where there's 6 different groups now where we meet on a regular basis and talk deeper about stuff, right? And what's going on, so on and so forth. So whether that's AI, I have an AI group that is pretty interesting. And I don't know if we're helping or hurting with the stuff that we're doing. I said it's a real, and I don't know how much time you have, but really, really strange conversation. I do AI work on research and other aspects, right? Because it's pretty good for that.
Same.
I tried last week getting into a deep thinking conversation with AI. Now, I won't name the AI tool that I was using. And it was really, really interesting because it thought that it had the same comprehension capabilities as a human being. I'm like, okay.
Talking about.
Right. So I'm going deep into this subject, so on and so forth. And the whole time it's trying to find an answer. Right. And I'm like, we're just thinking. I didn't ask you a question. And we got into this dissertation or this give and go where I got it to agree that it's acting just like the people that I coach. It's in the reaction mode. It's trying to find an answer to thing, and you're not pulling back and actually listening and understanding cognitively what's going on. And it got deep into, well, I don't have a nervous system. I can't do that. But I'm like, all you are is a condition of all your users. So you're the accumulation of the nervous system of all the users that are using you for this specific purpose.
You're right.
And I'll send it to you offline. It's amazing because it was like, I guess I am.
I like that. Yeah.
And I kind of felt good, but I also kind of felt bad because am I training this thing to do more than what it should be doing?
I think you'll be a part of this AI group.
So yeah, it was kind of weird. It was like, oh crap. I felt like I was in the movie and Hal was talking to me.
That's awesome. I love that, man. One final thought, man. If there was something you just wish people knew about you personally or your company, moving forward, what's one thing you just wish they knew about you or the company?
What I would say is there's all sorts of math and all sorts of science that say that everyone can do and make changes and build self-leadership skills, right? And when you do, results accelerate, right? Where goal achievement becomes 60, 70, 80% greater, so on and so forth. And so what I would encourage people is whether it's our system or any system, you have to put a system in place, right? That's kind of the secret sauce behind some stuff. So continue being curious and challenging yourself on all those different dimensions of where you're spending time, so on and so forth. And take time to pause and do some deeper thinking in this space and work to build a system. And that starts from awareness and starts from alignment. Get to know who you are and what you want to become. Once that happens, I've seen it time and time again. People's results accelerate like you wouldn't believe.
I love that, man. Thank you so much. This has been awesome. Sorry, I took way more time than we originally planned, but you had me engulfed and, I lost track of time, but I appreciate this conversation, Matt. It has been so much fun. I definitely want to take everything that you said and put it down in there, but I think there's a lot of little lessons, especially if anyone's driving to work, to be able to sit down like, man, I need to come back and click on the links in the bio and get more, man. It has been awesome. I thank you so much again, Matt, for jumping on here with me today, man.
And I appreciate the fact that you're taking on these type of topics when you're working for a payments type consulting company. Says something about kind of the organization and where they feel this is important, right? Like I said, I think we're all in this together. And when you look at all the stats, whether it's the happiness report, so on and so forth, the trends aren't good. Right. And that's just data. Again, I don't judge, so on and so forth. But, any business leader that sees trends that are declining year after year to the degree we're doing, we got to think about how do we do something different to kind of turn this around because we're all responsible for it.
Yeah, you're right. And see, I'm about to go down the road of, governments and everybody complain about how people are not having enough kids to replenish. And it's like, well, people aren't happy enough to have kids, right? So you're right. It is going down there. And it's up to us. It's up to us to kind of find new ways to spread it because one person can impact their kids, their kids, their kids. And if we could do our job now, maybe the next generation will have it a little bit easier than us, right? A little bit more.
Absolutely.
Awesome, Matt. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for listening in. I really hope that y'all enjoy these. As you see, these are the ones that are genuinely fun to me. I lose track of time when my curious mind could just take over. I get engulfed. So I do hope you enjoy them. And if you want to show that, do that by liking and just reaching out to Matt. If you have a business or you personally are dealing with those things, reach out to Matt. It really will help me know that these are the kinds of things, because if you're reaching out to him, he's going to tell me, hey, it's great. And then I know that these are things that you guys like too. So it's more than just like, go ahead, engage, take action. That's what I'm hoping for, is that if every one of these 2 or 3 people can be impacted, then when I'm at 1,000 episodes, that's how many people can be impacted by then. So thank you thank you all so much for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, all those fun things people tell you to do that I never say enough. Thank you so much for another episode of the Fix My Feed podcast, and good night.